Help me reach 1,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. For a few seconds, Emily didn't speak. She didn't blink either. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed, like she was trying to decide which version of reality to respond from. I stayed where I was, close enough to make my words unavoidable, far enough that she couldn't touch me. "What are you talking about?" she finally said, her voice thin, brittle. I leaned back against the headboard and looked at her properly. Not the woman I married, not the memory, just the person sitting in front of me, clutching the edge of the blanket like it might protect her. I saw the emails. I said, "No anger, no raised voice. You're not as careful as you think." She stared at the wall. Then she laughed. A short, breathy sound that didn't match the moment. "It's not what you think." I nodded slowly. "That's the line?" Her shoulders sagged. The towel slipped slightly, but she didn't bother adjusting it. "It just happened," she said. "I didn't plan it. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I waited. Silence has a way of making people feel it. "You've been distant for years," she continued, fast and now defensive. "You're always tired, always working." Rye made me feel noticed. He listened. He made me feel alive again. I almost smiled at how predictable it sounded. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I'd heard variations of it 100 times in other people's stories. I just never thought I'd be living one. "So you cheated?" I said simply. She looked at me then, really looked like she was seeing the damage the first time. "I made a mistake." "No," I said. "You made a choice." Repeatedly. Her eyes filled with tears. "It didn't mean anything." I let out a quiet breath. "It meant enough for you to risk everything." She reached for my hand. I pulled it away. Not dramatically. Just enough to make the boundary clear. That's when she broke. She cried hard. The kind of crying that shakes your chest and steals your breath. Apologies poured out. Promises. She said she'd end it, that it was already over, that we could fix this. Therapy. Honesty. A fresh start. I listened. I really did. And while she talked, something strange happened inside me. The anger I expected never came. Neither did the urge to punish her, or shout, or beg. Instead, there was clarity. Sharp and clean. I realized I didn't want to fix this. Not because I hated her, but because I no longer recognized myself in the man who would stay. I told her that. "I'm done," I said quietly. Her crying stopped like someone had flipped a switch. "You don't mean that." "I do." "We can work through this," she insisted. "People do it all the time." "People do a lot of things," I replied. "That doesn't mean they should." She stared at me, searching for something. Weakness. Doubt. An opening. She didn't find one. "Where will you go?" she asked. "I'll figure it out." "You're just going to walk away?" "After 11 years. I stood up and started pulling clothes from the dresser. "You already walked away." I said, "I'm just catching up." She followed me into the living room, still pleading, still bargaining. She said I was throwing away something real for a mistake. I stopped near the door and turned to face her one last time. "I didn't leave because you cheated," I said. "I left because you looked me in the eyes for months and lied without flinching. Because you made me feel crazy for noticing the distance you created. Because I don't want to wake up every day wondering who I'm sharing my life with." She sank onto the couch, stunned. I grabbed my keys and paused. For the first time since that sentence left my mouth, I felt the weight of it all. The loss, the grief, the end of something I once loved deeply. But beneath that weight was relief. I opened the door and stepped out into the night. The air was cool, quiet, honest. I sat in my car for a long moment, hands on the steering wheel, breathing. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel broken either. I felt free, not because I won, not because she lost, but because I chose myself the moment I realized I deserved better than being faithful to someone who wasn't faithful to the truth. That was the last night I slept in that house. And the first night I used to believe that if you loved someone deeply enough, if you stayed consistent, patient and present, love would eventually choose you back. That belief stayed with me for years, even when reality kept proving otherwise. My name is James, and for a long time, Elizabeth was the center of my world. We weren't dramatic or loud. We were quiet, steady, familiar, the kind of couple people assume would last simply because we always had. Elizabeth and I met in our late 20s. She had that effortless confidence, the kind that didn't need attention to exist. I admired her independence, her ambition, the way she spoke about the future like it was already waiting for her. I was different, grounded, practical. I planned, I showed up, I followed through. She once told me that was what made her feel safe with me. I held on to that sentence longer than I should have. For years, things worked. We built routines, shared responsibilities, talked about marriage in that distant, someday way. But slowly, without warning, something shifted. She became distracted. Not cold, just elsewhere. Her phone was always nearby. Her laughs came quicker when she wasn't with me. I noticed it, but I didn't accuse. I didn't panic. I adjusted. I told myself relationships evolved. There's a moment in every story like this when you realize you're the only one still trying. Mine came quietly. A canceled weekend. A rescheduled dinner. A look in her eyes that felt polite instead of warm. I asked her once, carefully, if everything was okay. She smiled and said she was just figuring things out. I believed her because I wanted to. If this part feels familiar so far, take a moment to press like, so this story can reach others who've lived it too. The truth came out on an ordinary evening. No argument. No build-up. She sat across from me, hands folded, and said there was someone else. She said it calmly, almost apologetically. She said she didn't plan it. That feelings just happened. She said she needed to see where it went. What she didn't say was that she'd already chosen. I didn't beg. I didn't negotiate. I asked one question. If she was sure, she nodded. That was enough. I told her I wouldn't stand in the way of something she believed in. I told her I hoped she found what she was looking for. I meant it more than I expected. Letting her go wasn't dramatic. It was quiet and final. She packed a bag that night. I watched her walk out of the apartment we'd shared for years, and I didn't follow. I sat on the edge of the bed long after the door closed, listening to the silence settle in. At this point in the story, I want to know your thoughts. Do you believe walking away without a fight is strength or regret waiting to happen? Share in the comments. The weeks that followed were strange. Painful, yes, but also clean. There was no confusion, no wondering. She had chosen someone else, and I accepted it. I focused on work. I went to the gym. I rebuilt my routines without her in them. Friends told me I handled it well. I didn't correct them. Occasionally, I'd hear about Elizabeth through mutual friends. She seemed happy. She had moved quickly. Trips, photos, smiles that looked real enough. Each update stung less than the last. I wasn't healing because I hated her. I was healing because I stopped hoping. If you've ever had to let go without closure, type the word clarity in the comments, not for anyone else, just for yourself. Months passed. My life stabilized. I started believing the story was over. That chapter closed cleanly, painfully, but permanently. I was wrong, because one night, long after I'd accepted her absence, my phone lit up a name I didn't expect to see again. Elizabeth,